I am a man with many enemies.
The elevator opens for no one.
The Boston Red Sox.
And plans on making me.
The mayor of Boston. The governor of Massachusetts.
I'm paralyzed into you.
Boston Globe.
And plans on making me.
It's a war.
And plans on making me.
We're going to battle it out.
All sit there.
Everyone looks like everyone.
My dick's so big, doesn't even matter. He's 2 feet tall.
And nobody will get in trouble. Now, of course, everybody's gonna kill each other after the watch.
He's gonna fucking open his mouth, it'll fall right in.
You're too busy to accept it.
And it is going to be, when it's done, the most successful podcast in the history of mankind.
And we already met.
Listen, there's only one Minifan show.
Everyone looks like everyone.
It's right here.
And plans on making me. And plans on making me.
No protection.
Ooh, good morning. WCXX, 23 letters away from pure pornography. Hero almost arrested on Jersey Street yesterday. Here's a song sweeping Boston. Rape!
There was no background check, and if they look, they'll see I'm erect. I barely stopped from removing my pants. In this interview, I can't take that chance. I've got my eye on the prize, but with this job I can't baptize. Minors called up to my major league. With my ejaculate, I rape. I'm a Red Sox employee. I'm gonna use it to touch kids, just like Jerry Sandusky. You're gonna shower with me.
As reports right now around the New England area, this song may replace Sweet Caroline, which would be, I think, very nice. Back to rape.
Now that I earned the job, there's innocence I've got to rob. This is better than when I was a correctional officer, because the kids will all look up to me. I'm in the dugout with Mookie, looking for a fleshy mitt to snag my fastball. I'm gonna rape. I'm a Red Sox employee. I'm gonna use it to touch kids, just like Jerry Sandusky. You're gonna shower with me. I'm a Red Sox employee. I'm gonna use it to touch kids. My name is Stephen Murphy, and my boss is Sam Kennedy. Remember.
Just like Stephen Murphy's wiener, that song is shooting hard up the charts right now. On the Kirk-Mine Show, WCXX, that is number one with a hard bullet all the way to the top.
Once you know the words, you're kind of just waiting for the Sam Kennedy line at the end.
And we are here with another Quantum Kirk. Danny, how's it going, buddy?
Doing all right. My younger son here is already crying hearing about kids getting raped. So that's a good start to the day.
That's yeah. What a start to a Sunday. So we are recording on a Sunday morning. We are a week out from the live show. This was would you say, Danny, the most requested episode to listen to for us to review from like DMs?
And of course, as you know, when we were on the main show a couple weeks ago, Kirk himself requested it. So
so here we are. And as being the only person who went to the Plymouth live show, I was boots on ground. Danny and John did not go. I'm not saying I'm better than you, but I'm just pointing it out that I was there, boots on ground. And people were, I was telling people what the next episode were. They were all really excited. I got some couple of tidbits as well, too. Learned some couple of inside things about the show that I'll reveal when the topics come up. So let's get right into it, Danny.
You didn't even share this with me ahead of time. I mean,
no. I want you to react a little bit live.
John probably already knows, but yeah, I'm gonna.
I was gonna press you so hard if you didn't have some Steve Robinson inside info from this episode. I would be like, "What kind of fucking journalist are you?"
yeah. So let's get to it. So Danny, what's your initial reaction to like this episode, to re-listening to it? Do you remember the first time you listened to it, and then now like re-listening? What's the different reaction to it?
very vividly. So unlike a number of other shows of this era, which I have re-listened to several times over the last couple of years, as great as this episode is, I don't think I've re-listened to it maybe more than once since its initial inception, because of the secondhand anxiety. Now,
yes, I wrote that down.
Makes it great. That's what makes it great. But at the same time, like, for example, Meet the Parents, Meet the Fockers, like movies like that, I don't love because I just get so uncomfortable for the character. I don't really enjoy it. And I found that a little bit with this. It's a lot easier to go back and laugh. But I remember at the time, especially those first 15 minutes when Blind Mike is also really uncomfortable, I remember thinking, oh my goodness, this is awkward. So paint the picture real quick. That's right. Again, the doorstep of COVID, as I feel like we say often here. Yes. I was in Chicago for work. And I remember I was packing for my flight, which had already been delayed a couple times. And I'd gotten a phone call right before this episode dropped saying that the president of my company had been fired and there was going to be a whole new team taking over the administration. So basically, I thought I might be out of a job. We hear about Steve and all this. My flight's getting canceled left and right. We're starting to get a little bit of reports trickling in about COVID. So basically, the world was falling apart as far as I could tell. So this was a pretty big moment in history for me personally. And this sort of secondhand anxiety on top of it was not quite as entertaining at the time as it is now.
Yeah. So like for me, 100%, I'm thinking like, how does Steve, my initial reaction was like, I'll say this, Kirk now to then, it's so different in that like his, like the way of, let's just do it. The Plymouth show. Okay. If that was like this era with Steve Robinson, and he showed up and like that screen was the screen that they used for Plymouth, like me being there, or the sound was as bad as it was. Like the show was great, like from what I, saw. But like Kirk, the reaction to Steve not pulling that clip, if this was that era, Cullinane probably would have like cried on air the next day. Like I literally told Cullinane at Cabbie Shack, I'm like, oof, Monday's going to be a rough episode for you. This could be like, redone of like, I was literally, and he's like, no, I don't think it'll be that bad. Like, it really wasn't my fault. And like, it was kind of like wild to see the two different Kirks, to go back to listen to this and how like legitimately mad he was at Steve for just having bad instinct. Cause now we know that if you apologize right away, like Cullinane does, Kirk just lets it go. Like he just kind of like, okay, it is what it is. There's nothing you can do. You're a dummy. Where Steve apologized this episode and Kirk did not give a flying fuck. He even said, he goes, what does your apology mean? Oh, that you're sorry? Oh, well.
100%,
like it was,
100%.
Like it was, it's two different Kirks, I feel like now. Like he has mellowed out a little.
No doubt. Sorry, guys. Let me pause this real quick.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm going to give Danny, I'll give him a 5-minute timeout. With super fast, I'll put it in super fast motion. I'll be like, at the end of the day, like we make fun of Danny, and he takes it right to heart, and he's like, "Oh wait, he's back." He takes it right to heart, and he fixes the problems immediately while being a good dad. So I respect that about him, and that's where I'm going to stop the super fast speak. It's going to come back on me talking up Danny.
Dave, I had the exact same line of thinking. When you look at, how Kirk responded with Dave a couple weeks ago, like you said, I mean, I think that's why this episode was so poignant. Not only did, for the time, not only did Kirk request it a couple weeks ago, but then with everything that happened in Plymouth happening, since then, this was the perfect way to go back and look, because I was almost thinking like if I was Dave Cullinane listening back to this episode, it might make me feel a little bit better about Plymouth. And of course, Cullinane gets called on this episode. He actually gets, he's interacted
name dropped.
He's the first name that gets brought up. Oh, bring in Cullinane, bring in Cullinane. There's a random Amoroso in there, but it's mostly people want Cullinane. But Kirk says exactly, Kirk was right. Well, within 2 weeks, I bring in Cullinane. Everyone's going to be asking for Steve again. Of course, 2 weeks might be a little accelerated, but he was talking about, the same idea. But yeah, I mean, Steve, you're right. Steve pretty much apologized right away. Said, I should have clipped it. I'm sorry, my bad. And then to just get that waterboarding of caller after caller and Kirk, it just absolutely
keep dialing.
Having them
keep dialing. Keep dialing.
It was one of those things. Yeah, it's one of those jokes that, and Kirk even talked about it the next day. It was hilarious at first, a little uncomfortable, but okay, this is funny. It gets to the point where it's just uncomfortable, and it seems like the only person having fun is Kirk and Mike as he starts to get on a roll and pile on a little bit. But as a listener, I'm like, leave this guy alone, and you can kind of hear Steve just like, I didn't have the clips, I didn't have the cut, and then by the end, he's like, then it kind of gets funny again, although as he said, not in the moment, but completely different way to handle it versus, Cullinane post Plymouth a couple years later.
So speaking of Plymouth, at Bio Dude's house, shout out Bio Dude, by the way, who had a great cookout. Like, everyone made fun of like the grill and stuff like that. And as you should, I mean, don't cook dino nuggets on a grill, but the food was fantastic. He had his buddy there who was like cooking up steak, passing it around on a chopping board. Like, it was legitimately like really good and a really good time. Steve Robinson was fucking there. Steve Robinson was at Bio Dude's cookout. The same guy who at the end hated the Minifans, absolutely hated us, was at the cookout in the cornhole tournament. And boys, when I tell you how serious Steve Robinson was taking this cornhole tournament, locked in. So it actually started to drizzle at one point, so they had to stop playing. And it was only for like 2 or 3 minutes. So all the boards, though, they got a little wet. Your man Steve Robinson was the first one out there with a rag drying off the boards so that they could continue the quarterfinals and the semifinal. Like, we were all saying, like, he's here just because he wants to win this tournament to beat all the Minifans. Like, that's his only focus, was to like, fuck you guys, I'm better than you. So it was great. And I did get to chat with Steve, and I told him that we were going to review this episode next. And I quote, boys, great. Oh, yeah, what a great episode for me. Yeah, I really love that you guys are doing that. Also, I'll say, audio that Kirk wanted, super overrated. Super overrated. Not even sure why you wanted it so bad. I was like, oh, okay. So, John, if you don't mind playing that little clip there at the 8-minute mark.
And I just wanted simply to make that up now.
I don't have any excuse. I should have had it. I just wasn't thinking that was where we were going to go today. That's fine.
You didn't think we were going to go to me being at Fenway Park while the Red Sox were holding a press conference that you wanted to play sound. Hold on. You wanted to play sound of it, right?
Yes.
So I'm outside trying to get in, recording it, and you thought Hein Bloom talking is as interesting or more, well, in your mind, more so, than my attempts to try and get in while that's going on.
No, I didn't think it was more interesting. I thought that you were going to go through the questions that were asked that
I was going to while also juxtaposing that with me being on the outside trying to get into it with my own questions. The questions of which I think I said on the Periscope.
Yes.
I mean, did you watch the Periscope? I don't think you did.
Yeah, I watched the Periscope until the press conference started, and I watched the press conference, and I went back and watched the part of the Periscope I missed.
Are you sure you watched the whole Periscope? Because people will ask you questions about it, and you're not going to have the right answer. I got the sense talking to you after we were on the phone yesterday that you didn't watch the Periscope.
I probably didn't watch the entire thing.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
now you're lying. What the fuck?
I also had plenty of business calls that we were doing yesterday.
Okay, well, now you're giving me an excuse. You could have just said that at first. Instead of saying you just watched the whole thing. Now you're saying you didn't watch the whole thing.
I watched you from the start until the end. I was posting it on Barstool.
But then you just said you didn't watch the whole thing.
I didn't realize you had the second podcast.
You just said you watched from the start to the whole thing. Which is it?
There were 2 podcasts. I watched the entire first one, and then I went back and found the audio of you interacting with the cops because I thought
so. You didn't watch the whole second one, then?
No.
Then why did you say you watched the whole thing?
Because I watched the whole first one. I'm sorry.
So you're lying.
Speaking imprecisely.
No, you were lying.
I'm not lying.
You're just covering your ass.
I've already admitted that I made a mistake not having the Periscopes cut up.
Yeah, but that doesn't excuse it.
He was quoting one of them on Twitter, to be fair. So I assume you watched that one at least.
I mean, that doesn't excuse it, though. You know what I mean? Like, that's great.
Yeah.
It's wonderful you're sorry. I don't think you're sorry. I think you're sorry that you don't have it. I don't think you're sorry to me for it, which I don't care if you're sorry or not. But that doesn't excuse. That's like saying, well, what are you going to do? I'm sorry. Sorry I didn't have that sound. Sorry the sound doesn't work on the show. Sorry we didn't get the show up today. Like, sorry doesn't do me any good.
I don't know what you want me to do, Kirk.
Awkward silence is that's everything right there. So Danny, here's my thought process.
Yeah, I had to keep the awkward silence.
Now having that little conversation with Steve did Steve not have it because he just didn't think it was that compelling? Like, is that a little bit of breaking news here? Or because he does say, he's like, oh, I didn't know that you would want it. Or did he listen to it and think like, it's not that big of a deal?
So I would almost go with that excuse if he had actually listened to the whole thing, but that clip just proves that he didn't. So he didn't listen to enough to know that it wasn't all that compelling. Because otherwise, why wouldn't he have said it that day as well? Like, it's interesting he said that to you.
Oh, because
a couple of years later.
Yeah.
Well, why not use that as one of his excuses at the time? And so
because Kirk would have lost his mind if he told Kirk that he didn't think he was compelling.
He lost his mind anyway. How much more mad was he going to get? I think. True. At some point, he'd already gone past the Rubicon, point of no return. He's already fucked. So it's like, what are you going to do at that point? No. So I actually tried to do a little journalism myself. It was not nearly as successful as you, Daver. I did attempt to reach out to Steve Robinson via DM. However, he is verified, and I am not a verified X account, so I was not able to contact him directly. But what I was interested to know was pretty much what the info you got, because I was not aware. This is breaking news. What you just disclosed regarding your conversation with Steve last week. But I was curious, like, is there a little bit more to the story? Is he willing to come out with some more facts? Was he doing something else? I mean, one guy accused him of, being at Red Robin the night before. Maybe he had something else going on, which, again, and this is brought up multiple times, this is not any sort of a condemnation of Steve's work ethic. I mean, he's a hard worker. Kirk acknowledged it. Steve knows it. We all know it. I mean, the guy worked his ass off, and he cut a whole lot of sound, a lot more sound than we get now.
100%.
And I love
it's
Dave,
just true.
But, it's just that's not his thing.
It's just true. Yeah.
I mean, he still had sound. I mean, he had sound ready to go on the Netflix thing. So there was he was working on other projects at the time. But was there something else? Like, was he just doing something else? Was he goofing off? Was it, but it sounds like he was working on other things. I would tend to believe him. It is weird that didn't hit his instinctual string of, hey, maybe I should get this.
So that's where I just think there's a disconnect between, like, I've said this from the beginning, that Steve didn't know what he was signing up for with this show. Like, I'm going to hold my guns to that till the day I die, that he kind of got it the more and more that we got along. He got it more and more.
This is 9 months in.
But that especially... Yeah, so he didn't get who Kirk Minihan was. He never got him. Like, he never actually totally understood what he wanted. Like, for instance, he had topics ready to go, and Kirk brings it up of, another Trump topic, another Netflix Aaron Hernandez topic, like stuff that, Kirk now doesn't want to talk about anymore. Kirk was already, I think, getting over the whole politics thing, and that's all Steve wants to do, as you could see with the main wire. So I think there was already a break in, like, what they were interested in. I don't think Steve was particularly interested in every day 2 to 3 hours goofing off all the time. I don't think that was his genre, so to speak. So I just think you see the kind of break in ideologies already happening here.
Sorry, we just had a Rice Krispies avalanche here to clean up
all right.
aisle 7, but it's all right. It's not going anywhere. I think the biggest part about that, you're right. I think, as far as the politic tinge is concerned, I do think at this point, though, Steve understands the show. I mean, because he even said the next day, like, he'd played along with everything to that point. As soon as the stuff happened with Ben Robinson, his parents, and not talking about family business, within the first week of the podcast, once he got that through his mind, that's when I think his mindset started to change. So by the time you hit January 2020, he's pretty well in rhythm with the show here. So I don't necessarily go with that, but maybe maybe he sort of reverted to that. I mean, the caller that lets him off the hook at the end, right, which I'm sure we'll talk about, was a Howie Carr guy. And basically he's the one that's like, oh, no, he shouldn't have cut the sound. And, granted, that could have been a plant at that point. But, it does seem like this was a little bit different from how they did things on Howie Carr. I get it. But at the same time, this is a lot closer to, this whole thing with the Red Sox and sex scandals and the, everything
that is closer to what Steve wanted. Yeah,
I mean, this is borderline. I mean, this is human interest. It ties in with politics. It ties in with power. With power families and people just that are billionaires being able to buy whatever they want. I mean, this is basically a political story in and of itself. It might not be taking place in Congress, but it's political. So why would Steve not be interested in that?
Yeah, true. I'll definitely give you that. I just think more of, like, he just didn't think Kirk, causing a ruckus, so to speak, was, like, super interesting to him. And I think that was his instinct. And that's what Kirk got so mad about. Of, like, how your instincts
Dave, have you seen any of the footage? have you seen the footage? Did you see it at the time, or have you seen any
I saw it at the
since?
time. I have not seen it since. I haven't seen it since. I saw it at the time. I watched it like that day.
Same. I'd love to go back and maybe do a recap and even maybe do something, like this. Maybe we can even get Kirk involved. Now it's been a couple of years. He's had time to cool off. Maybe he's okay with going through and basically act like it's, January 2020 all over again and do the play-by-play and get his input. That might be kind of fun to do, because without going back and reviewing the footage specifically, I'm having a hard time remembering how compelling it really was. Although based on just the comments they made throughout it, I mean, he's, the Steve Buckley comment and, making fun of the other
He's
reporters,
yelling at Buckley. He's yelling at Gasper. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and he's asking questions in the press conference. I mean, so there's definitely newsworthy stuff there. And that's the part, especially the press conference part. Like, how does Steve not include that? But he includes talking with the cops.
With the cops. That's such a Steve. That's so crazy. So what do you also feel about, like, we're 9 months in? What just happened? Okay, there we go. We're 9 months into the show, 7 months into the show, like you said. And it's still crazy to me. Obviously no YouTube, so we're not getting it live. So the people that they're calling don't know what they're talking about. And still no phone calls in. Like, we're still at the point where we're not taking phone calls. Like, I could have sworn by this point into the show that they had already started taking phone calls. And obviously they're not. This is a line where they're randomly, Steve just has a deck of numbers that he just is able to cold call people that had, given their phone numbers to the show to call them when they want to include fan interactions. It seems so,
and people
like
they're sending them in live at the time. They're getting new numbers as they go.
Getting new numbers.
Makes it so much better. If they'd opened the phone lines and let people, crap all over Steve, okay, that would have been fun. But the whole outgoing call aspect of it just makes it a million times better.
And then Kirk definitely leading the witness, by the way. He would have been a fantastic lawyer. He every phone call, he just leads them into exactly where he wants them to say. And then a lot of these people were quick with it and were able to pick up right away and shit on Steve without without being told exactly what to say. So that was interesting. One phone call in particular tickled my fancies. John, would you mind playing the old man that Kirk woke up?
Call someone else. Like, what?
Kids have a lot of catchphrases.
They do. It's the whole thing.
Hello.
Whoa. Who's this?
Dave.
Dave, do you know who you're talking to?
No.
Do you don't recognize his voice?
Nope.
Do you listen to the Kirk Minahan show on Barstool Sports?
No.
No, you don't?
Dave, Steve, who are you calling?
No, my son does.
Your son does?
Oh.
Yeah.
Who's your son?
Jason Richard.
Did we just talk to him, Steve? You're calling family members, you stupid fuck.
I'm just calling the list of numbers. That
all right, Dave, let me ask you this. You might be the best person to talk to about this, okay?
Yeah.
So you probably don't know what happened yesterday. I was at Fenway Park, okay?
Yeah.
I was there for an hour, causing all kinds of trouble, doing stupid shit, doing what I do, right? You probably have no idea. But is it reasonable to expect that my producer would have some of that sound, which was recorded, ready for the show today?
I don't know.
Well, David,
you know what, Dave?
You know what, David? You're knocked out.
You seem like a nice guy, Dave, but honestly, you would do just as good a job as Steve. Do you have any history in producing radio at all, or podcasts?
No.
What do you do for a living?
Retired.
What'd you do for a job?
GE, 38 years.
What for 38 years?
GE?
Oh, GE?
GE.
Okay, where are you located?
I'm in Lind.
What are you giving me an attitude for? You don't seem happy with me right now.
You woke me up.
Go back to sleep. Are you old enough?
Right.
Do you wake up with a hard on still or no?
Old cadre.
Goodbye.
All right, well, fine. I was wondering about old guys like that. Jeez.
Why do we have his number?
The guy that old to wake up that late for?
What kind of a son?
Steve, can you do anything right? Can you call somebody, please? Just call somebody else. I don't want to hear your fucking voice.
What kind of a son? What kind of a son is Blind Mike? You are correct. If you only knew, my friend. So, for the people that don't know, that is Jay's Mayhem's father. That is Jay, who calls into the show, who is probably, I mean, John, I know, I kind of like Jay in person, but he's the worst person ever on Twitter. Like, by far. It's not even close.
Jay's the worst person in real life.
All right. I didn't want to say
he's
it.
The worst person
he's the worst person ever.
I love Jay. I'll always
and Blind Mike says
because he can't stand up for himself because he's so tiny. But no, Jay is the worst person on earth ever.
ever. And like when Blind Mike goes, "What kind of son?" I think we all just went, "Who know that? Who it is?" Just went, "Yeah, Blind Mike, you killed it. You killed that one."
Kirk goes, "What kind of guy this age sleeps this late?" Like, if you only know.
A guy who raised Jay. Jay. Like,
you wouldn't know they're not blood related from that.
You can't tell they're related. That guy worked 34 years at the same company. Jay.
So the irony's not lost on me. So this guy worked 34 years for GE. Jay barely has a job and spends too much time talking to GVE. So,
oh, Danny, that's great.
Yeah,
Dad joke, bang bang.
I love you.
Oh, all right. So that's a caller that once it was like pointed out to me. Obviously, in the moment, no clue. When he said his name, it just didn't click. And then re-listening, I went, "Holy shit!" And then Danny, you sent the text like, that's Jay's dad. We have to play that. I was like, that's fucking brilliant. So yeah, I mean, one dynamic I want to get into away from the phone calls, Danny, is just I wrote it down here. I like circled it, started it. The Kirk-Mike-Steve dynamic at this point in the show. Okay, Kirk brings it up. He shits on Blind Mike a few times in this episode, calls him dumb. I'm with two dumb guys. I'm with two, terrible, like how I do this show. Stuff that he doesn't say to Mike anymore ever since Mike came back from, fencing. Kirk doesn't really talk down to him so much like that. And then at this point, Steve was absolutely, before this episode, talking down to Blind Mike as well. Like it was very much, Kirk even pointed it out. He even says to Mike, I think he goes, "Come on, Mike, go ahead. Like he's always talking down to you. This is your chance to, so Kirk, I think, wanted to create the dynamic of them two battling. I don't think he liked it when they were on friendly terms. I think he thought it was better for the show if there was tension, at all times, obviously. So I speak on that. What are your thoughts on that whole dynamic at that era of the show in those three?
This is definitely something that over time, I think had warped my memory of this. We did talk about Steve. We've talked about this in other episodes, I think, of Steve almost gives out that aura of acting like Mike's boss a little bit. And you see that dynamic a number of times in other episodes. I think the really fascinating part about this particular episode is it did take Mike a couple minutes where he's a little cautious and he's more mature Mike. And he's probably more the beginning Mike, the first 15-minute Mike is like what Mike now would be.
Yes.
Because about 50 minutes in, when Kirk gives him permission,
yes,
not only are you allowed to, but you're required to shit on Steve Robinson because that's what this episode now is. So Mike, either get on board or you're out of here. And Mike, God bless him, he owns it. I mean, he turns it on and he's anti-Steve and he's just rolling with it and just, piling on like the tallest freaking sandwich in the world. I mean, every layer.
Yes.
It's
go ahead, John.
He's doing his job. Now, you guys brought up great points that Mike was unbelievable during this episode. But in the first 15 minutes, once he once he was let loose, he's great. But the next day, immediately, and I didn't say this yet, this next episode, the day after this episode, I actually would say is a better episode than this. Because it's the fallout from this. So the next episode is called Kirk Minahan's producer contemplates quitting. So it's like,
and it's only an hour, which is really short for this era of KMS.
And they go right back into calls and take calls or start making calls immediately again to see if people thought Steve was wrong yesterday, which everyone just then knew they were going to be on the show and blah, blah, blah. But Mike immediately gets called out by Kirk and Steve and just starts crumbling.
You said you had that. Was that one?
So yeah, I have the clip of Mike just the snap.
Right, let's play
Fuck you, Mikey Smokes over there.
Well, I mean, that would be my takeaway if I were you. I mean, let's be honest. Mike is useless. I mean, we could just get rid of Mike tomorrow and replace him with somebody else. I'm Kirk Minahan. I mean, you're gonna let Mike Geary.
First of all,
dump on you like that.
First of all, I wasn't harsh enough. I didn't dump on him at all.
Oh yeah, sure. You were.
I laughed. What am I supposed? Hey, fellas, are we all not without sin? Come on,
grinning like the Cheshire Cat
gang.
over there.
What's that?
I said you were grinning like the Cheshire Cat.
You were enjoying.
Of course I was. I thought it was a great episode. I thought it was hilarious. But what should I have said? Hey, gang, Kirk, let's.
But you offered no defense for Steve. Nothing.
What defense would I have had?
I'm just saying from Steve's perspective. I mean, I'm his boss. You know, I should be mad.
There really was no defense.
You were kind of piling on.
Right. Well, no. I said in one of the clips that went out, I said, you encouraged me to go harder, and I said, I don't want to pile on the guy. I just don't understand why the sound isn't cut. But if you want my honest opinion, yeah, I think it's fucking crazy that he didn't have the sound cut. I didn't go hard enough. He talked shit about me at your little lunches and phone calls. I did it on the air to him. He could have argued with me if he wanted yesterday. Fuck both of you. How's that?
Well, get the hell out of here then. Leave.
I enjoy
hell,
it.
The fuck do I care?
I enjoy it.
I'll do my show. I don't care if you want to hear it, not to be honest with you. But no.
Oh, yeah. So that dynamic, great pull, John. John, great pull. As we all know, we all love Blind Mike. Yeah, we all love Blind Mike, but when that voice gets high and he starts screaming a little bit like that, it's...
And that specific word. So when he says, crazy! A facsimile of last January when he's yelling at Portnoy.
Portnoy,
yes. Exact same ramp.
That's the voice.
Same word.
It is where crazy. I will criticize Mike because he's that sensitive, but Mike's one of my favorite people on the mic now because he's that sensitive and that rant he had. Like at the end, he's like, "Fuck you, fellas."
Twice.
Yeah, twice.
But he's so self-aware of it now. That's the difference. He's still sensitive, but you hear him time and time again say, either on Kirk's show or Blind Mike.
He's getting better though. Blind School helps.
He gets it. He knows what sets him off, and he either kind of plays with it, or he just says, "You know what? I'm a bigger man."
But
thank God he wasn't at this point.
If you listen at the top of that clip, Kirk says something that breaks him slightly, and then Steve says something that hits him with a baseball bat. Kirk says like, "Oh yeah, I if anything, Steve, like I was going to come in here today and say that about Mike just piling on just because Kirk was taking the devil's advocate side." Then Steve calls him or says to him, "Yeah, Mike's over there smiling like the Cheshire Cat."
Cheshire Cat. Yeah.
He says it twice. He says Cheshire Cat and Cheshire Cat.
Cheshire Cat, wherever the fuck.
Yeah.
No, he says both.
Yeah.
So yeah,
he says both.
And
that clip got me. I have a bunch more clips from the next episode too, but yeah, keep rolling.
Yeah, so it's just that I love that John pulled that up because that dynamic, I think hearing the Mike make fun of like Steve and now like Steve defend himself the next day clip and just that and Kirk just loving it all. Like, yeah, I'm his boss. Like I can make fun of him. But Mike over here, I mean, come on, you know? And you just hear Mike break and it's funny because like all that happened. Steve quit a few months later. Mike went away to Blind School. Like Kirk created the dynamic at this point, and I think this is what people talk about when they say old KMS is just the tension in the room at all fucking times on that show. Like you would listen to an episode and you never knew what type of dynamic or mood, if Kirk was going to be lighthearted and funny and they were just going to like do funny stuff, or if Kirk decided today like he's going to be a terrorist and I'm going to fucking break one of you guys or break both of you.
Well, and as both Mike and Steve admitted, I think it was on that next episode that John just cited, you know, they say that they have a great relationship off the air. They're totally cool.
Yeah.
So as soon as they get in that room, and now they're
fighting for their lives. They're fighting for their lives. Yeah.
And the best.
Like,
so
they want to.
I've got to give. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No. You go ahead. I think you're nailing it. Go ahead.
Just to finish this point. Now that I've again looking back on it, at the time I probably had an idea of it, but again, a lot was going on. I wasn't really paying attention. I didn't have the context of history. Listening to every time that Mike piles on Steve and Steve doesn't say anything on that episode, you can tell he's making mental notes.
Mental note. Yeah.
He's got his list. He's you know, Billy Madison just getting ready, just making his list.
So
and you can tell, and then he just waits till the next day. It's kind of like a whole like, you know, a parent or a spouse or whoever, you know, they're mad at you. They're just ticking away. All right. They're tallying their scoreboard. So the next day when it's out, he just basically Steve pulls the "I'm not mad, I'm disappointed" type face line.
That's why Steve's head is so big. He's always taking mental fucking notes.
If Steve had responded in the moment, it would have been totally different because he would have been emotional. He was in the wrong. You know, he just got piled on and he's lashing out. He has nerves of steel and he let it build up. Think about it overnight, stew on it, get ready with some one-liners. The next day,
I kind of have a good.
He was playing chess.
I kind of have a good clip, David, and then you could go. I kind of have a good clip that follows this, and it's the beginning of the next day's podcast, and it's like Steve shows the early breaking point of like Steve wants to like quit. Like Steve really wants. He wants out of here. Okay,
run it.
It's done. We move on.
Right.
I think this one's going to linger. Is the kind of thing. Are you going to leave the show over this?
Maybe.
Really?
Yeah.
Let me hear about this. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, why would I want to just persist in an abusive environment?
Well, you can just leave anytime you'd like.
Okay.
You want to leave after the show?
I mean, I know that I can leave anytime I like, obviously.
I mean,
but no, I mean, I'd like to stick around.
You persist in an abusive environment?
Yeah. I mean, nobody likes just to get screamed at.
Are you a pussy?
Oh, no.
I'm confused.
No, I'm just saying nobody likes to get screamed at, but I don't.
I screamed at you for about 9 seconds, and we took a bunch of phone calls. It's a podcast. So I mean, here's what I would say: if that's what you want to do, if you have doubts about this show and whether you want to be on it, leave.
Well, I mean, I would like to stick around.
No, that's not what you just said 3 minutes ago.
You said, are you going to leave over this? And I said, well, yeah, maybe it's crossed my mind. You don't think it would cross my mind? Enduring 2 hours of abuse yesterday? Yeah, I mean, I considered it, but I'm here, and my plan is...
Well, no, you're not really here, though. You're barely here. You're not even interacting at all. You're being a fucking kid.
I'm interacting with you right now.
So, I mean, here's what I'd say.
Am I supposed to come in here just like all happy-go-lucky?
No, we can fight it out. You're not even fighting it out. We do a talk show. We do a talk show.
We fought it out yesterday.
Well, Mike's right. You can't sit there and be like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe.
Now, this I'm shocked by.
Why?
That he would want to leave over there. I thought it was all in...
It wouldn't bother me.
So... Great clip by John. Great point. I also like Mike. Did you hear Mike's little ting in there, Danny? Where Kirk's like, when Steve says, "Oh, who wants to be yelled at all the time?" Mike goes, "Oh, really?" Like that is, the dynamic was crazy at that point, and I do think that, like, yeah, Steve was starting to see like, oh, all right, I don't know if he was used to being strictly a producer. I don't think he knew he was signing up for being like content all the time as part of the show.
Again, signing up, yes, but at this point, he knows. And
he knows.
But I get it.
Yeah.
It's not hard. I mean, I wouldn't do well in that situation. I don't think you would either. No offense.
No, not at all. About a half hour in, I'd be like, all right, what are we doing?
Yeah. All right, this is enough. All right, we get it. This was funny. I can laugh. I go along.
Yeah.
All right, now we're an hour in. Now I'm really uncomfortable. Now we're an hour and a half. Now we're 2 hours in. Like, oh my God. I will say, I think, the fact that Steve, put up with it as long as he did, I think, credit to him, but there was in the back of his mind, I'm thinking, this isn't what I signed up for, because the next day again, or later that day, whatever, he talks about, I do so much work, this isn't, because Kirk keeps saying, like, if this isn't a real job, or this isn't a real job, like if you were a dentist or a lawyer and something like this happened, if I started calling people and they were shitting on you, that wouldn't be professional, but we're in the business of entertainment. So that's what we do here. And I think in Steve's mind, he wasn't exempt from that, but he was always, Dudley Do-Right compared to Mike's,
he thought Mike was the punching bag. He thought Mike was the punching bag. He thought the dynamic was, and all of a sudden he is, and he didn't like it, and he did not like it. Yes, totally. I think you nailed that right there, Danny. Like he definitely thought like the dynamic of this is Kirk is number one. Mike's the punching bag. I'm the producer. Who'll get some shots here and there, but like Mike is the guy who's going to take, the shit. We're going to send Mike to do the wacky stuff, go to Red Sox Winterfest, hang out with the interns. Like he thought Mike was like, a third intern almost. I think if you were being honest with Steve at that point, like, he thought Mike was the third guy, maybe, so right. I do think that when the guns were turned on him, he wasn't quite feeling it. What else, Danny? Now I've kind of tailored, what else now in this episode? Cause I feel you've listened to it more times, jumped out at you that you thought was like super interesting, or names that you heard or something like that?
Well, you alluded to this, Dave. I was impressed generally by the conduct of the Minifans. I know we sort of get shit on as, being fat, low IQ, which I think is a lot of times accurate.
Fair.
But I think most people were pretty much thinking on their feet, considering they were getting this random phone call.
With no context of what they were talking about.
Well, yeah. And actually, how many people actually answered their phone? I guess maybe they saw the Watertown number and that was enough for them to think, because they knew they had submitted their number, that, okay, maybe I can answer this. I mean, I don't know about you. I think we talked about this. We don't tend to answer any numbers we don't know anymore, because it's probably going to be something useless or bad. So the fact that many people answered and that many people more or less went along with, what Kirk wanted them to say, which again, if it only been one or two, wouldn't have been that funny. But the fact that it was one after another, just,
what do you think? 30
eventually you sort of
total?
reach critical mass. Yeah, I think they estimated 40 at one point. It must have been, I mean, counting probably the numbers disconnected. I like the guy that still had Vivaldi as his ringtone. Please enjoy the music while your party is reached.
That was great.
And then he was the one guy that had like never heard of Periscope. So go figure.
Yeah, so I do have a couple of things from Plymouth that kind of tie into this show. Number one, the hug, the Steve Robinson Kirk hug at the show was the absolute highlight for me. Steve seeing Cullinane struggle, like he was legitimately. I had a view of Steve and Whitney, like I literally could like see them where I was sitting, and Steve was smiling like the whole fucking every time Cullinane fire Cullinane chant started, or Kirk got mad, almost threw a microphone at Cullinane. Like Steve was like Whitney was not exaggerating. Steve was, Cheshire cat, as he said, just sitting there, just smiling ear to ear. The hug was fucking amazing. Like it really was emotional. You could tell that like they actually do have, respect and a bond for being in this shit together. I mean, they solved the murder. We're gonna give them credit. So yeah, that was very cool. And then a couple of people like talking about Quantum Kirk. People were like, "Where's Danny? Hey, how's Danny?" I'm like, "Oh, he's got a kid. Things happen." But we did laugh about that too, Danny.
I deserve it. I know. I'm the first one to have a kid. I know.
Yeah, but they a couple people told me that that they got phone calls and answered on this show. So John, if you don't mind playing this next phone call of someone who told me that they were called, and I was shocked that this person was
great investigation here on this, Dave.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
I can't do anything fast. Okay. 3, 2, 1, go.
This shit like this just ruins my fucking day. It really does. Your work is, it's like.
I think you're holding it together pretty well, though.
I'm trying.
Being that angry.
I'm trying. Because I know it's not a lack of work ethic.
Right.
Please leave your message.
Stupid, it comes to instincts. It's just,
Well, me?
Again, no. Yeah, well, you for one. I wasn't talking about you, but yes, that's true. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah.
But when you do a show where it's just play your Republican talking points, and this guy's not going to criticize Trump, and we're just going to suck each other's dicks for 3 hours and go home, you're used to that. No, Howie Carr wouldn't go do that.
No.
Put it this way, Howie Carr wouldn't go to Fenway alone. No way. He had no.
Hello.
Who's this?
Nick.
This is Nick.
Kirk.
Yes, thank you. Did you watch the Periscope video at Fenway Park yesterday?
No.
Yeah, you aware of it?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, why didn't you watch it?
People got to work, Kirk.
Okay.
What a great.
I was really hoping you were going to say, because I want to hear you talk about the show the next day. So, so we did this, right? I go to Fenway for an hour. I jump up and down, go around, do all this, get all this out. First of all, you listen to the podcast every day.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think that knowing me, that I might want to have some of that sound ready for the show the next day?
Definitely.
All right. Why don't you ask Steve Robinson how much sound he has cut up for that? Go ahead. The floor is yours, Nick.
Steve, how much time we got?
We don't have any.
Nick is in stunned disbelief.
It's horrified.
That is the sound.
What do you think of that? What do you think of that, Nick?
Oh my God.
All right. Goodbye.
So I want to point out, guys, that is the fucking legend, Commander Box Eating Dad, who I got to room with in Plymouth. He stayed in our Airbnb. One of the funniest fucking kids going. Yeah. It was me, Robinson Rules, Montante's buddy Boo, Meemaw, and Box Eating Dad. We rented a palace on the fucking shores of Plymouth Lake.
There's the only fans for that weekend.
Yeah,
oh
Jesus.
boy!
I want to see Boo and Montante going at it. What's that?
It was great.
Yeah.
It's great. But no. So Boxing Dad was great, and he mentioned. I told him we were going to do this show, and he mentioned he's like, "Hey, I'm one of Danny." Stop it, Danny.
We're just doing all day.
Stop it. It's all day. So he mentioned that he was one of the callers, and I was shocked that he was a fan. At that point, I thought, John, that he was like a newer, because he's a younger dude. I thought he was like a newer Barstool sort of like fan. And he said he found it from Barstool, but that he had listened from episode 1.
Box Eating Dad was just on Poppy's Kitchen, and he said that he started listening at Francis's episode. So there's some fun facts for you. Shout out to my research.
There you go. Yeah, good job there. But good research. So I just wanted to point out he's a funny dude. Great weekend with him, and it was just weird now, like listening back and hearing his voice after he told me that. I was
You bring up a
kind
good
of in
point.
disbelief.
You bring up a good point. I want to know so Danny, you said this earlier. There's people who like the performances were better the next day. The people they called for the Minifans because they were more prepared that this was happening. But like, I'm wondering who these people were that answered and then just like hung up quick and then heard themselves later. And they're like, do they tell anybody or do they just hold that for the rest of their life? Because that's, you know, like, do they tell people that they like, oh, I was that kid who was a pussy and hung up?
Yeah, I mean, Phil McCooch told me at the bar that he got called and he didn't answer, but he called back. So he's someone who actually called back in when they like he missed the call. So yeah, John, I think people do if you ask them or they'll tell you about it. You know,
another person that got called to was Sheldon from North Dakota. He got called.
Yes, Sheldon was one of the early ones. Early ones, yeah. But I love Box Eating Dad's answers. Like people got to work.
Yeah, people got to work.
That's such a fucking
and his
great
closing
answer.
line was great. Oh my god.
Oh my god. Yeah.
My god.
Yeah. Great. So Danny, I want to get into.
He's one of my favorites. This is just a little shout out here if you're looking for additional content. I know we're always, playing up other podcasts here, but the NBC interview he did last fall, which he presented himself as Craig Coney, Twitter employee, and he actually did a whole interview on the Elon Musk takeover. Just dropped very good show references left and right. Even if you're not a fan of VGS, I highly encourage you to check that out. Absolutely brilliant work by Box Eating Dad, and he's forever in the Hall of Fame as far as I'm concerned. Really,
that's the most valuable fan you can have. Like, that's the most valuable fan you can do. That's free marketing and like just showing the world that you have diehards on. Like, you have a beast on your side.
Hey, so one quick tidbit, then we'll get back. Is Box Eating Dad got dropped off to Biodude's house by an Uber, but on the other side of the lake, the wrong side of the lake. So literally, he had no ride to get over to Biodude's. He's like 15 minutes away. He calls Craig Coney, who's on his way, and Craig goes to the other side of the lake and picks him up and brings him to Biodude's. So that's what that's fandom and connection with.
He's
fans,
the number one very good boy. Craig's a smart man. He knows to take good care of his top fans.
Yeah. So let's get back on track here, though, boys. So that answer by Steve at the end, I want to get into that, Danny, is Steve's reactions, and John mentions it earlier. I think we have a nice outro for it. His I don't have it got pricklier and pricklier and pricklier at the end. When do you think he broke? Like what hour do you think where he was like, I think it started right there actually, which is about 49 minutes in, where he's starting to be like, Kirk, fuck off, without saying Kirk, fuck off.
Yeah, I'd say it's around there. And I think the only real gauge we have for that is his response to the callers after they ask him, Steve, where's the audio?
Yeah.
The pause starts to get a little bit longer. He starts to get a little bit more terse. It sort of goes from the beginning where he's kind of like, okay, yeah, he's going to do this like 3 or 4 times. And then it hits the point where he's like, Kirk means this. We might be here all night. And then finally you start to get back around the last 15 minutes or so. And that's when he's like, you know what? He almost admits defeat internally because you can kind of, I just don't have the audio, like just sort of defeated, deflated, so you sort of see this whole evolution of Steve Robinson's mantra or attitude throughout this.
Yeah. So, Danny, I want to wrap this up with basically it's full circle. It's kind of like, it's crazy how we review these and then like it comes full circle. We had the Steve and Kirk hug in Plymouth. We have Blind Mike now, like more assertive. It does feel like 2 totally different shows compared to like what it is now and what it was then. What other like thoughts in your head? You said you had something to bring up about the hug in Plymouth that you kind of wanted to end with as well too.
Well, the hug in Plymouth, along with you saw both in Portland where he hugged Justin, right, and then he did the hug in Plymouth with Steve, which I saw the photos of. I think that's so poignant because we all know as Minifans, what significance that is to Kirk. Like, he doesn't want to even shake people's hands, and the fact that he's actually hitting the point where he's hugging someone in public in front of hundreds of people. It's just so out of character for him as we know.
Fucking weird to not want to shake people's hands, by the way.
So, by the way, speaking of,
fucking show some goddamn.
Side note: when David and I were in studio, we were both very careful about how we approached it and the whole before and after thing. I did hear, Dave, a little scuttlebutt. You were talking some smack about me hanging around in the studio after, which I will defend myself. It was not true. I was
go
packing
ahead,
my
Danny.
stuff. I brought way too much stuff, but I was packing my stuff. And Cullinane came in.
Danny, did I not run out of there and stand down the hallway for at least 2 more minutes while you were in studio?
Then I hear you're chirping about, oh, Danny hangs around in the studio too long. You know,
you were there too long, Danny.
Speaking up on my behalf.
He's a terrorist. He'll ruin a show like that. He'll ruin a partnership, a fucking enterprise, and like this, Danny. You got to be careful with this guy.
I fucking ran out of there. I ran out of there. I was like, bye, see you in Plymouth. And ran, and I'm at the end of the hallway because I'm like, all right, well, me and Danny will walk out together. I hear Danny's like, oh, thank you again, and I'm not saying he wasn't packing his stuff up, like I'm sure he was, but it's like, get your shit and just go.
I was mostly talking to Cullinane. Cullinane came in. I shook Cullinane's hand. I talked to Dave.
See,
for
all right,
10 seconds. So most of the noise you heard, I said one last bye to Kirk. Have a good trip because he was going to Chicago. All right. Jeez, I don't appreciate this slander.
By the way, your source is on Montante because that's the only person I fucking told. So
I mean,
good job.
Anybody could have guessed that.
Yeah,
little gossip girl,
a little gossip queen that Montante
didn't
is.
make Montante's world notes, although I haven't seen one of those in a while.
So. Before we leave, which we're gonna leave on, and you teased it earlier that we're gonna have the compilation of just Steve's replies to people asking him if he has the audio. That they played. I wrote my notes down instead of trying to talk over you guys like I normally do, and I thought I'd go through these. I only have 3 things. One is, Danny, you defined like you said, the definition of awkward is the movie Meet the Fockers. That was weird to me. The Minifan performance, I already brought that one up, but Kirk's the biggest thing from this episode that I saw is Kirk's performance. Notice none of these clips were about Kirk, were really directed toward. No, why? Because it was the greatest performance of them all, and it's like a real fucking magician knows when to sit back and let fucking magic happen. So it was it wasn't like Kirk didn't have any fucking, like, he did, because there were so many, but it was like there was
he was just throwing grenades and watching. He was
pulling one string and then the next day just pulling the other string to see if there was still fucking spool. Like, it was fucking awesome. That's my biggest takeaway, though. I also drew like what looks like possibly a German World War II handgun, which is a pretty good drawing.
Nice.
Sure, some people could use that right now.
Yeah, to Danny's Meet the Fockers thing, I would compare. I know what you're saying, Danny. I would say if you're an Office fan, Scott's Tots is the most.
Oh, I can't watch that.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. That's taking in. Like, I legit cannot get through that episode.
So
you knew what I meant, though. You knew what I meant by me.
You said this episode was your version. Mine is the Rich. I won't listen to the Rich Kelleher experience because, like, I'm Rich Keller. I'm his buddy. Like, I can't listen. And they just used him like a little monkey boy. Like,
so we are gonna review that episode, and BA wants to come on for that episode.
Yeah,
yes.
We'll not Rich Keller.
We should get Rich on too.
No, fuck Rich. Don't bring Rich. Let's bring BA.
Yeah. Rich is too much into Rich to do a review of Rich's episode.
And he's horrible.
It wouldn't be good. Yeah,
he's horrible.
He agreed. All right, so that's gonna wrap it up, boys. John, you're gonna do the outro. Danny, go take care of your fucking kids, for Christ's sake.
Yeah,
all right.
Let's just remember, Danny's a great dad. A great dad.
KMN above all.
Yeah. Dana be in the middle of the point. He's like, Oliver.
Rice Krispies explosion.
Yeah, Rice Krispie explosion. All right.
I have a lot of cleanup to do, so.
Peace, boys.
All right, guys. Have a great Sunday.
See you.
None. It's not that I don't want to play it. I didn't cut it up yesterday. None. I pulled 2 cuts of Kirk interacting with the police. None. None. I didn't cut up any of it. None. None. We don't have any. Nothing.
This is good work.
Yes, I've been knocked out. I didn't pull any of the
I told him
I didn't cut it. Yeah, I didn't cut up any of the Periscope. I did not have it prepared. I did not have the good stuff prepared. I didn't cut up the sound. I did not have the sound. I did not have it cut up.
This is.
I did not.
Like this.
None.
That's not a lot.
I did not have that audio ready. I didn't have it cut up.
What were you doing? Were you gourmet burgers and brews last night?
That's more than I remember.
Oh, man.